Welcome, everyone. I'm Ken Chad from Ken Chad Consulting, and this is our AI webinar, part of a series of webinars that we're doing as part of higher education library technology. Really pleased to have the panelists and also sponsors of HE LibTech from Open Fifth. So welcome, really appreciate the support that you give us, Jonathan and Sam from Open Fifth for HE LibTech. So I'll let people introduce themselves as we go in terms of the discussion. But where I want to kick off is a question that's been concerning a lot of libraries and universities and institutions as we've moved into the era of AI over the last few years, which is the impact that AI bots, if you like to call them, are having, and in our context, on library systems in terms of impact and slowing down. And I thought I'd kick off by asking Jonathan from Open Fifth to give some background to this and talk about his experience as an organization that's been hosting library systems. So really is at the front line of this issue, and Sam will also contribute to this. So Jonathan, introduce us to the issue and tell us a little bit about your experience of this.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'm Jonathan.field. I'm one of the two founders of Open Fifth, and I guess I've been working in library automation since very early 90s, so a lot has changed. And I think certainly in probably around about March last year, 2025, we saw this sudden mass increase in traffic from largely from AI bots coming from all different places, IP addresses around the world. I guess we were perhaps fortunate in that we already had some mitigation strategies in place. So things like Cloudflare. We'd actually been experimenting with a piece of software called Anubis for the several months before that. Anubis is an open source piece of software that can challenge browsers as they reach a website. So we were able to deploy that quite quickly. But I think it's a moving target right now. So we've seen, even in the past year, we've seen changes in tactics by these AI bots, even down to the level of creating, bypassing DNS records by using IP host files. So we're still having to fine tune all our rules that we have in place. I would say probably every couple of weeks, every 2 to 3 weeks, we're having to just fine tune these rules to accommodate for these scenarios. If I think back through my sort of past, historically we had something called robots.txt, which some of you will remember and know about, which was a sort of gentleman's agreement, I guess, with scrapers, and they would abide by those rules. And if they found that they weren't allowed via the robots.txt file, they would walk away, and it was fine. But right now it's pretty much a wild west of scraping, where it seems like anything goes. I mean, we've spoken to a lot of people within the industry, and they're all experiencing this. And I would say that a sort of secondary impact of it is the cost of defending hosted systems has risen sharply. We've certainly seen that. I know other people have as well. It's with library budgets tight, it's difficult to pass on that cost. It's almost you're expected to defend it as part of your hosted systems. But yeah, it's something that's I think is only going to probably get worse.
We did notice as well, didn't we, Jonathan, that it was the academic ones that were getting hit the worst.
Yes, particularly open repositories, library catalogues full of a lot of metadata. And of course, it's kind of fine for us because we have a team here who could do it. But I do see on mailing lists and things a lot of libraries who look after things themselves, and they really don't have the strategies and resources and skills in place to actually defend themselves. So that they're really left quite vulnerable, I think.
So Jonathan, that's a good point, and I wanted to see there's been a trend over many years towards having people like you host systems. It sounds that this is another issue that should make that move even more happening. That, as you just said, it's going to be easier for someone like you to monitor and control that than each individual library or institution.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely have, I guess, a bigger tools that we could use compared to a lot of local libraries. Because quite often an IT department will set up a server for somebody, and then there'll be somebody in the library who's kind of left to manage it, and it's really not within their skill set to do that. And it's tricky because it's an open line between we want to, Dave will talk more about this, we want to have open data. Who owns this property? In the past, libraries wanted to be indexed by Google. So we've got to find the right balance, haven't we?
So that's a really good introduction, I think, to Dave of Libraries Hack. So Dave, just give us a short introduction and give us your perspective on this.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. And I mean, Libraries Hacked is a project I've been running for about 15 years, and despite the name, I'm not actually a library hacker. The idea of the project is to kind of prototype digital applications and promote open data. It's this idea that customers or users or the public, so particularly with public libraries, can actually develop applications themselves against library data and library systems. And it was about 15 years ago that I had this idea that I wanted to produce a search where you could search for any library book across all public library catalogues in the UK. Now, I'd have loved to do this against the kind of open APIs I imagined that all the systems had. So you could just quickly do a fairly lightweight search against the identifier and very quickly realize that none of the library systems had such a thing. So as a fallback, I had to web scrape the library catalogues. So I've still got an application up and running where you can, I mean, it's pretty clunky. You can type in an ISBN and it'll search all the UK public library web catalogues and return live availability information. So, if you're looking for a particularly rare book, it'll tell you, it's in Cornwall libraries and there's one copy currently available. And I also discovered this is fairly well used. So it's being used regularly every day by library services themselves, particularly ones that have interlibrary loan agreements. Say as part of Swells, so Swells is a Southwest Regional Library Service, so they have an interlibrary loan agreement. And they don't actually have a way of finding easily availability of items in other libraries. So they've been using this tool. So it clearly has kind of application and useful application to library services and potentially the public. There's also examples of lots of other applications. So there's a popular Chrome extension that I know. I think it's called Library Extension, and it's for public library users who say they're on a Amazon site or another bookseller. It'll tell them whether that particular item is actually available in their local library. Now that uses web scraping because that's the only way that the kind of public or third-party applications have of integrating with library services in terms of open APIs. So I suppose my standpoint is that library catalogs websites should be interoperable. They should be open. They should have open APIs available. The fact that people have to resort to web scraping has been a historic problem because we haven't developed open APIs, we haven't developed data downloads or easy, lightweight ways of actually integrating with the data held by library catalogs. Now, this problem that's kind of emerged with AI bots is a huge problem, and I fully understand the systems don't want to go down and have to kind of put in place mitigation to deal with it. But it's a symptom of the lack of those data integration services and why we're a step behind other kind of digital information services. We don't have those easy open applications that have actually forced people and now AI aggressive bots into kind of scraping and taking, I mean, I do scraping where you have to kind of make 10 requests to get the availability of an item, which is ludicrous because it's trying to simulate what a user has to do. And it shouldn't be like that. It should be a simple, simple search that kind of quickly returns the data, even from a data cache that's updated every hour and causes no kind of impact on the underlying library systems. So that's kind of where I stand on this issue. I don't know what the answer going forward. I fully understand why BTF, OpenFIT, for example, are blocking, using various methods, because at the moment loads of library services are having their systems go down or come under extreme pressure. But what we need to look at long term is actually the open APIs and open data services that kind of avoid web scraping entirely.
Yeah, that's a really good summary, Dave. And I think it does highlight, though, the tensions around that word open, that, as a domain, we in libraries are really up for open, but there are some issues there. And as like you say, I don't think there's any immediate solutions right now, but that call for more open data is well made, Dave, and I think it's something we need to think hard about. We're going to shift gear a bit now and talk about some of the practical aspects of AI in terms of libraries, and I want to start with you, Kerry, and think about AI is promoted widely as a tool to help stream library workflows and more generally workflows across the board. So how's it, Kerry, how's it impacting you? And can you tell us a little bit about your experience and unmute yourself and talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. I'm Kerry from Blackpool and TheFylde College. I am the Digital and Learning Resource Centre Manager here. We look after from FE, HE to apprenticeship provision. So it's quite a broad range. But back to your question in regards to AI. Currently, I think the most useful AI adaptation for us at the moment is being able to utilise it in everyday work. The work that quietly takes up staff time. We do a lot of data collection in our library. We monitor the staff number on gates. We do a health and safety form in the morning to make sure everything's prim and proper. We've got a checklist of what we do in that morning, and a lot of it is routinely provisioned by AI in some way, shape or form. So we have AI agents. We use Copilot as an organization. We are trialing the Microsoft 365 Copilot license to achieve that. But it's the little things. And this is where I think FE libraries can make really practical progress. However, it depends on your organization in terms of what platform you're using, what restrictions. So for example, for us, we are a Copilot licensed institution. Nothing else is allowed to be utilized on a college device. So everything else is blocked.
And I'll just interject here, just a point, if anyone wants to ask any questions, there is a Q&A, so do put your questions into the Q&A. And Sam, I don't know if you want to come in and there's some people raising their hands, but if you want to put something in the chat or the Q&A, please do. And Kerry, that's an interesting point you make about Copilot being an institutional tool and therefore the one, in a sense, that you have to use. Is it frowned upon to, or not allowed simply to use other things like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever?
It's all blocked.
Right.
All blocked. And I think that's, not just because we want to focus on Copilot, because there are privacy concerns around student data, etc., etc. So our IT team have been very diligent and they've communicated this effectively. I think I saw a message in regards to Microsoft Copilot chat. We have the full package in regards to the Microsoft 365 license, but only 100 of those or so. It's not for every colleague and student currently. We started with a small provision of 10 licenses for that instance to trial it, and then it's been expanding to see what we can do and how we can maximize the usage of it.
Right. Martin, introduce yourself and give us your take on this.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. So hello, everybody. I'm Martin Wheatley. I am the Deputy Head for Digital Innovation and Independent Learning for LeedsCity College. So we're a Google Workspace institution, but we also have Microsoft as well for group services. So we're a bit of a mixed economy. We don't really have libraries in the traditional sense. We've got independent learning zones which have resources. It's very similar to like a micro library almost. And we've got staff in there who support across skills development and academic skills and things like that. So they use AI quite a lot in their kind of wider work. We are investigating extracting kind of MARC record data using AI because we don't have traditional librarians to do cataloging when we do purchase books and things like that. So we've got someone who's trying to set up a little agent and workflow so that it will extract the mark record data for our mentors and our iLearn leads so that they can add it to their catalogue records without having to go through that sort of side of things and do it manually. We're a bit different to Kerry's organisation in that we have a few things that are completely blacklisted and blocked. A lot of those are kind of the conversational friendship bots, I'm going to call them, to put it mildly. But things like Claude and Gemini and Copilot and ChatGPT, we don't have them blocked, but we're very clear with staff about what they should and shouldn't use them for. And the mandatory training we have in place for this sort of thing is to remind them about that data privacy side of things. And we try and monitor it. And if it gets a little bit out of hand, we have to then address it and potentially change tack and say, actually, you can't use this because you're not using it responsibly. And then the iLearn team are doing a lot with students around that kind of critical thinking, data literacy, and kind of ethical and environmental impact of using AI and things like that, because that's such an important facet of that skills development for the students now, as well as the staff. Just going back to the previous point that you guys were talking about in terms of the bots and things, I'm going to just give a shout out to Open5th and say, yes, I remember that kind of spike last year around the bot use and the kind of incoming kind of inquiries from them, shall we say, and we barely noticed any slowdown because of the work that they'd done. There was a spike in bots and then it went away, and we didn't really see an impact from that as an end user. So that's a positive for how they're going about dealing with these things.
It's interesting, that contrast, Martin, between you and Kerry in terms of what's allowed. I wonder if it'd be worth you, both of you, coming perhaps commenting on that, in that what are the pros and cons, do you think, about perhaps, Martin, you've illustrated perhaps a more liberal view, clearly some concerns about privacy, clearly some concerns about ethics. Kerry, a bit more of an institutional, do it the Copilot way. Can you talk about some of the real positive advantages of using AI? You've mentioned cataloging and metadata. That's an interesting one. And highlight where it's, in your opinion, really working well. Martin, do you want to kick off with that?
Yes, I just saw Kerry unmute herself, so I was just waiting, but I will go first. Thank you. I think because I've got quite an overarching view of kind of the college and the group and what their expectations and hopes are. And I'd say that one of the big things I wanted to have an impact for is that admin drudgery. And it doesn't matter what role you do, there's something in your work that is a repetitive pain in the bum, and you want to outsource it to somebody else or something else. And if it's appropriate, if you can get a Copilot agent or a Gemini workspace flow going that will deal with that, that's the first thing we should all do if we're going to use it. More broadly, I get a little bit uneasy when I see staff desperate because of their workload to kind of get marking, feedback, grading, all that sort of stuff outsourced, because I want the back end stuff behind the scenes, the boring bits, to free up their time so they can spend more time with their students. And it's the same for the iLearn team who kind of host those iLearn hubs and the micro libraries. They want more time with students. They don't want to be doing the admin stuff that goes with it, like the feedback forms and all that sort of stuff. You want something to just do that all automatically for them. So that's the benefit of it. I mean, from our approach, I'll hand over to Kerry in a second. From our approach, yes, it is quite liberal, and we've been quite open because we want to see what's working and what will have an impact. There are times where IT have found that a little bit nerve fraying, shall we say, but they've been quite open to letting it happen and seeing, as long as we're being responsible, they've got no concerns, but they're also sometimes quite willing to say, we need to do something about this or that, and then we look at it and work together to address it.
That's interesting. Kerry, talk about what you see as being the real positive impact of AI at this point.
For us, I think it's to echo what Martin said, especially for library and digital teams, the value is not about replacing the professional judgment at all. It's about reducing the admin side or admin friction, so the team can spend more time with student support resource access and service improvements. And I think that's where we have to focus with predominantly. In terms of our IT department restricting access, we didn't start off that way. And it's probably not going to stay that way. You know, I think every organization and institution, we're still learning and still following and still catching up in some areas. And it's not perfect, and I don't think it ever will be for quite a while. But as long as you're proactively using it, I'd say, but in a way that doesn't impact some of the services that you're offering. And with everything, you know, we're having to check and we're having to review it. It's not just a matter of, oh, it does this admin task and that's it, goodbye. We have to make sure that we review what it outputs. And I think that's part of the learning process as well.
I think what I'm picking up is that sense that it's really useful to be engaged with this. There's different approaches, and I think it sounds really right what you say, Kerry, that, you know, this isn't a fixed place, is it? This is a moving target and things are going to change. And I think this is a good point, actually, again, to switch gear a little bit and talk about AI in the context of the students themselves, in terms of, now, how is that working with you? What are they doing? Are they going rogue, or are they following policies? Or and perhaps, Kerry, you can carry on and just talk about how in your institution and what you're doing, that this change in terms of student behaviour, sometimes I hear about it being called as the information, the answer first approach, where they go to an AI and get the answer and then almost go backwards into finding the resources.
Would you mind if I introduce this one, Ken?
Sam,
okay, so
please.
I'm Sam Goldsmith. I am the business development manager here at Open Fifth, but I look after the academic libraries because I have a extensive, we won't go into the number of years, but an extensive academic library background. So, but I was really interested in this, how student behaviours are changing because of AI. And anecdotally from my customers, I'm hearing that a lot more staff time is being taken up checking, verifying, and having to reject references that have been hallucinated by AI. And they look very plausible as well. They look like real journals they use subject experts, and they make up the DOI numbers. They're very difficult to spot. But we know there are some models like Perplexity that actually show you where the references come from, but actually statistics show that our UK students are most commonly using ChatGPT, followed by Gemini and the Microsoft ones, for all their study and assessments. And last year, Deakin University, a study of mental health topic literature reviews using ChatGPT, found that 56% of those citations were fake or contain errors. So the large learning models aren't going away, and students are going to make use of anything that saves them time or makes things easier for them. So I'm wondering what the experiences are from Kerry and Martin, and what you think we can do about this issue.
Kerry, do you want to pick that up?
It's a very large issue, and like you say, students are changing how they search. Many will now ask AI before Google. It is really, really challenging, and even more so, they may ask AI before searching the library catalogue or database or discovery system, and that itself poses so many challenges. It means our role is shifting in terms of the libraries. You know, we need to teach students how to find information, but we need to teach them how to question the AI generated answers for hallucinations, for source checking, for understanding bias in their research and transparency. And oh my God, even knowing when a proper academic source is still needed in some cases. How we overcome it, I think we have to provide those sessions to the students. We have to provide that guidance in the libraries, and it's not just the libraries. I'm going to add, it is every colleague, from lecturers to program leaders to researchers. Everyone needs to be involved in this, not just the libraries.
Martin, you know, I'm going to call you liberal, Martin, now, because you've had that more liberal approach to staff. Are you more liberal in terms of how things go with students? What are the issues you're finding?
I mean, not quite as liberal on this front, because the awarding bodies have their expectations. They've got a business model and they have an approach to assessing and examining students and their kind of knowledge. So we're seeing, I mean, Sam was talking about the research that was surfacing 50% kind of hallucinated references. We're seeing a large uptick just of work being submitted by students that is quite clearly AI. So it's not even getting to that point and going, oh, this reference, this bit here looks a bit sketchy, let's go dig into that. They're literally getting the piece of work and just going, blimey, this student's gone from a pass to a distinction in one foul swoop. And it's like, well, they're writing like a totally different person. So the issues that Kerry sort of talked about and the wideness of the issues as well is exactly the same for us. It's all about that student critical thinking and assessment and looking at things. And I know we talked about bias there. I mean, books and print contain bias as well. So this should just be a much more kind of important thing to teach everybody everywhere, because it's such a big thing. Like if you look at the state of the nation politically and you go onto Facebook and stuff, there's all sorts of AI nonsense out there about the state of the country. They need to understand that. They need to understand the bias in print. They need to understand the bias in something that's presenting itself as a knowledgeable source in an amalgamated way. That's the bit there, I think, is because it's coming from here, there and everywhere. You've got to do a bit more digging and researching about it. So hopefully at some point we can drive people back to reputable sources and catalogues and resources and say, actually, you've got this brilliant piece of summary that can help you learn. Now you need to still go and do the research yourself to verify some of it. So it could play into our favour if we approach it right.
I know there's a bit of a concern about the inequalities with those that can afford big licenses to AI and those that can't. But in what we're discussing now, maybe those students that can't afford it will actually produce better work if they're not relying on AI entirely and actually doing their own literature reviews and things.
I wonder if there might be a move to more verbal assessments of student work, in the sense that, you know, they're going to have to actually know what they're talking about in their submissions. But Martin, Kerry, do you want to? What does it mean in practical terms? Is it? We've been doing information literacy for a long time in libraries. Is that where this sits, or is it something bigger, more broader? You know, and talking about across the whole institution. Martin, Kerry, did one of you want to kind of talk about, so what are you actually doing to help the students with this issue? Martin.
I'll go first. Yeah. So the iLearn team who deal with the academic skills, they do some specific kind of AI modules as part of their offer, but it is very much around getting students to understand the basics of what these things are, where they've come from, where they could be going. Machine learning through to AI, through to AI agent and all that sort of stuff, generative AI, blah, blah, blah. But they also do the kind of making sure that the work is your own, and, you want ownership of it, because it's your, in theory, it's yours, just like the mark is the teacher's and it's based off your work. We're trying to get like a bit of a social contract set up for that sort of thing between the staff and the students, where the work is acknowledged that the student has done it rather than an AI. It's going to be a massive piece of work, but I think it should sit in that information literacy, digital literacy piece. You don't want it to be too different to that, because you want to bring everything back to being the same. You just want people to make sense of things themselves and check it, because that's a really important skill nowadays.
Yeah, there's an interesting question here that's come in from Olivia Edmonds, and so they've begun to look at staff and their knowledge confidence in this area, AI, as our students will take whatever the lecturer says is truth. So the question I think is really intriguing is how are you engaging with staff with training development and following that through in practice? If students are taking the lecture as truth, and maybe the lecturers, the teachers, they've some way to come in terms of AI. Any thoughts on that, either of you, Martin or Kerry?
I'm going to jump in there. So because I'm part of digital, which means we look after the VLE, so Canvas we use at Blackpool, and we offer not just Copilot training and AI guidance for students, but we're currently transitioning that to staff sessions and development as well. I think so far in the past month or two, we've done about 25 sessions, participated in our staff development days. I think we've got a couple of AI working groups as well to ensure that, we're reviewing the assessments, I think a bit of what Martin said, because we have a HE provision, we use Turnitin for our HE assessments, which detect plagiarism, etc. And there's even conversations around that, because even that AI detection is not perfect. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a lot of policies and procedures in place. And I think no matter what organization, and FE, HE, the goal is for our FE to transition into HE in some cases, whether that's an apprenticeship or full-time course or wherever the case may be. So shouldn't we be putting the best practices in an FE to transition to HE? Yeah, I think that's also a challenging conversation at the moment.
Any thoughts, Martin?
Yeah, so going back to the original point that students should see the teacher as the kind of point of knowledge and experience. I was talking to a couple of work experience students who were up with our comms team yesterday, and they're in our 14 plus academy, and they were saying that they can tell when their staff member has just used AI to produce the slides, and they're like, for them it's a massive turn off in terms of that lesson. And you think, if the staff don't have the time, I understand why you would use it, because you're so overworked and you've got a lot to do. But there needs to be the balance. So that's the other side of my role. So the iLearn bit is student facing, and then I've got a digital innovation specialist who's going to do the staff side. So we'll be doing the training and the upskilling and the kind of framing it around appropriate use and ethical use over the next kind of 12 months. And just keeping it as part of digital innovation rather than having it as this kind of extra AI thing. It needs to be just seen as all in one, because then it makes more sense and you get to a point where you're ready to use it. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge for two of us across 2,500 members of staff, but we seem to have decent backing from people that have got a voice. So hopefully we can make an impact and just get people to use it in the right way at the right time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to again switch back a little bit, shift gear again, and you've touched on some of these points. The points I want to talk about is we've been talking so far about ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, but thinking about integrating specifically into library tools. There's certainly some systems have an AI-based research assistant. Martin, you talked a bit about how AI is being used in a metadata, a cataloging context. Can you talk a bit more about how it's going more directly into, let's call it that library infrastructure of technology and systems? Are you using
Jonathan
research
could say
assistants?
a bit. Yeah, Jonathan could say a bit more, but it's interesting because there seems to have been a real push to say, oh, our new system integrates AI, that's lovely. But on investigation, a lot of that isn't anything new. It's just really good search engine work and things like that that has been around for quite some time. It's nothing particularly innovative, but just adding the label of AI seems to be a big marketing tool. And we have a bit of a different approach in open source anyway, don't we, Jonathan? As in, we're much more measured about whether that tool is is actually enhancing the product. And we also feel very strongly about the values associated with using AI. So it'd have to be something very ethically well sourced as an AI tool, and it would have to be, and we would have to be sure that it was actually adding something to the product. And we wouldn't just pretend it's something exciting and new and say, "Wow, we're now adding AI."
Yeah, I think there is a role for it, but I think we are seeing a lot of AI being added for AI's sake, and not just in libraries. I think I mean, how many marketing emails do you get every week that says we've now got an AI this, and then 3 weeks later it's, oh, by the way, that's going to be an extra X per month for that AI tool. So I think it's partly about loading cost and adding to the prices of products that you're buying. But yeah, I think there's definitely value for AI. It's focusing it where it really can add value and not just AI for AI's sake.
That's a good point, and I think with all these technologies, that classic hype cycle, isn't there? Everybody's got to be AI, and I think you made a good point, Sam. But where's it actually going to help people in terms of library system? And it's just put another reminder to everyone: if you do want to put some questions in, do use the Q&A to do that, and we'll touch on those later on. So we're coming to pass the halfway point, and I think it's time to perhaps try and draw some threads together. And again, really for everyone, I wonder if we might just go through everybody and just think, if you were to leave people today with one or two key takeaways, you might repeat what you said already, but what are those one or two key takeaways that you want to leave people with? And Dave, I want to start with you actually, and just what encapsulate the message really.
Thanks, Ken. I mean, I was just after that last point, I was remembering that I recently set up a collection pot for a colleague who was leaving. Where you go and give a donation and put a little message, and the little message box now has an AI button, so it can generate your message for you and say, lovely working with you. It's been really great, blah, 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 blah. And you kind of think that's completely unnecessary. That was the only AI in the whole website. And it's a completely inappropriate, unnecessary use of AI, but they bunged it in there, just to look like they're up to date and they're generating a thank you message and a warm message. And you could change whether you want it to be warm, nasty, whatever you wanted it to be.
I bet there wasn't a nasty setting, Dave.
No, but it did look ridiculous. And so I think pick up on that point. I think AI is clearly a very powerful tool, but being really kind of discerning about how we use it. Also, to pick up, I think on the earlier points about kind of open data and the open web, I think digital transformation is still a really, really hard thing, and we can't kind of plaster AI on top of the requirement for wider digital transformation. I think that's also a danger. So, good data management, data privacy, open data, all those sort of things. I think we're in danger of kind of seeing AI as being a solution, kind of like a shortcut to getting to where we need to be, and it's not. It's as reliant on good data practices as anything else. So that's kind of my key takeaway.
Sam, go on. What's your key takeaway or takeaways?
I think we need to focus on what librarians do best, which is teaching critical literacy. I think that's going to be a big issue. And if we don't really crack on with it, we will have people going into workplaces where that becomes the norm to just generate using AI. I don't think that's somewhere we want to be. And I'm also a little bit cynical about this plastering AI over everything when it isn't. It's nothing intelligent about it, actually, but it's just things that have been around for quite some time, just reused as a marketing tool. I think we should use AI in the future, and there are some brilliant uses of it, but we just have to be really careful not to get swallowed up in the whole marketing hype about it.
Good. Jonathan, for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to be hopeful about AI behavior in the future. I think we're in a very early stage, and right now there's almost 3 groups. We've got the US, which is pretty much the Wild West of AI. We've got EU, who are doing a lot of interesting work on the AI legislation that they're putting in place. And then we've got the UK sitting somewhere hedging on the fence, somewhere in the middle there. But I do think as time goes on, I do think there will emerge some kinds of standards and stronger legislation that sits around all of this and controls the way people use this in a responsible way, and perhaps a more ethical way and more responsible way, so that hopefully it's not going to be the Wild West for the next 20 years. Hopefully that's what I hope for.
No Wild West, yeah. Okay, Kerry, what about you? What for you is perhaps the key 1 or 2 takeaways?
Oh goodness, I think with me, it start with the service needs first, not the technology.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, I love technology. I love AI. I'm a big user of it, but it's making sure you're using it for need and not necessarily just for the sake of using it, like you've already been mentioned. And I think where Sam mentioned information literacy, it's do we need to separate them now, AI literacy and information literacy? I think they may need to sit together, and that's that. But it's going to continue, so we can't stay still.
Thanks, Martin. Round us off now with your key takeaway or takeaways.
Can I just say what Kerry said?
You can.
I mean, it is. They're the key bits. If you're going to use it with purpose. Think about it beforehand. Your data literacy, your information literacy. Get the training in there for both staff and for students. And then if you are going to use it for those kind of bits of your job that you want rid of, and the things that can just happen automatically, rather than anything that's going to have an impact on your relationship with students or service users, the people that are most interesting and important to you, because ultimately that's the bit of your life you're going to find most rewarding, rather than just turfing that over to an AI to deal with. Getting to meet people, that's much more fun than dealing with back end stuff and admin and things like that. So yeah.
Okay. What I want to do now, we haven't got any more questions. We had a few interesting comments, but I wonder, I'd like your views on a piece of work I've been doing that's been inspired by JISC. It's this idea of maturity levels. It's come from the wider world, that there's a sense in which without any technology or all sorts of things, there's a maturity level. You go through stages, and I think it's useful to adopt this in context of AI. And I'd be interested, particularly again from Martin and Kerry, to see where you stand. So I've been working on a kind of schema, I suppose, of AI maturity levels for UK academic libraries, FE and HE. And the top level is, 0, you're unsure, there's no coordinated AI activity. And these are going to move, as you said, with time. It's a moving step. 1, aware, AI recognized as important, but largely unmanaged. 2, experimenting, individual pilots, staff use emerging. 3, operational, AI embedded in selected library services. 4, integrated, AI incorporated into library strategy and institutional governance. So we're talking about governance and strategy there. And then finally, a transformational stage, AI becomes a strategic capability. So I know there's a very sort of short summary, but I wonder, and I'd also be interested in the views of you, Sam and Jonathan, from a vendor, point of view, where you think you might be in terms of AI. But Martin, as you're there, do you have a sense of where you might sit in that 1 to 5 or 0 to 5 schema?
I mean, because I'm kind of looking at it from the broad bit, I cover everything with, like I say, 2,500 members of staff. I think we've got about 25,000 students, 6 campuses, but about 18 buildings across Leeds, Harrogate, Keighley. I get the idea behind it. We're a long way from being able to say that for that entire organisation. You're almost needing to do it on a department by department basis, which is kind of where we're starting with it, to figure out, if I go to comms, where are they at? If I then go down to finance, where are they at? If I go to the iLearn team, where are they at? ELT, where are they with this sort of stuff? Are they leading by example, or are they hoping we fix it? So I get the point of these things totally. I think before you get to the point you can assess it as a whole, there's so much more work to do with all these different departments, because otherwise you've just got this horribly bitty. The thing that you're saying is the representative of your organisation just isn't there if people go to the wrong building almost. So that's kind of my perspective on those. I get the point of them. I've got a lot of work before I could even do that for Leeds and Luminate.
I think that's a really good point, but you can't be in isolation, can you? I think it's really important. Different areas will be at different maturity levels, and that's a whole level of complexity in itself, isn't it? Yeah. Kerry, I don't know if you had any thoughts about, are you experimenting, individual pilot, staff use emerging? Are you operational AI embedded in library services? Or where do you think? And the point is, some of this is about knowing where you are so that you know where you might go, in a sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I can speak for myself and our team, so it's very limited. So there's different levels, and as Martin said, I literally, when I was looking through that document, thinking we're not all the same level. You've got students who are maybe level 2, dare I say, some students are level 1, some at level 3. It is quite varied in terms of that aspect, and also depending on which course they're doing, which is interesting as well. And then you've got the staff workflows. I'd definitely put us at 3, but it could be in 2 in some areas. Again, room for improvement and moving forward. But practical AI use is emerging and becoming useful in all our day-to-day work. We've got AI literacy, I'd say level 2. We're moving from a digital literacy into responsible AI literacy or information literacy. Governance and policies, we're going through pilots, we're reviewing all of our policies and procedures to go along with that as well, and training. And I think someone mentioned in the chat around discovery and is it embedded within our library systems. I think we have enabled an AI feature within EBSCO. But yeah, it's still in that starter mode, so I'd probably put us down at 1 or 2 for library systems. Because we don't need to be there right now. I think we've got a lot more development to do with staff and students first and foremost.
Yeah, I think that last point, where you need to be, is important, isn't it? Yeah. I think that's a point well made. Jonathan, Sam, I don't know if you want to think about this in terms of your position in the market and systems and so on.
Well, I guess my observation would be, well, certainly as an organisation, we have people at different levels, and I think we're always saying internally, you can't just say to somebody, use AI, because people are in different places, and some people, we've got very clever technical people, and we've got people who've got great personnel skills, but maybe they're not so interested in that. And I do think it points to a bigger digital divide in society as a whole, where we expect everybody to be able to use these tools, and we're embedding it into everything. Our banking, our dealing with HMRC. Nobody wants to talk to anybody. What if you haven't got these skills? I'm living down in the southwest here, and I've got friends locally who've, still got 2 megabits per second broadband and no 4G, and that's not that they don't want to use the tool. It's that there's absolutely no infrastructure. All the infrastructure is focused on the towns and cities. So where does that leave people who either are living out on the fringes or not interested in this stuff? Why should people be interested in AI? They might have better things to do with their lives.
But there's a reason that us 2 are here on the panel, because we are quite advocates for AI. But like Jonathan's just said, it really does vary. We have got our developers love to use it to help them with ideas for programming, and it really does speed up a lot of that work that they used to do. So it is in our case, most of its use is just practical need based, not just we're using an exciting tool for the sake of it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're coming to the end now, and I think that's a good point to summarize, Sam, is I think what's come from all of people here is, you know, this is practical. This is about solving real problems, and what we've seen is that AI can be extraordinarily useful in that. But there is, of course, as with all technologies, there is the hype cycle. I think you made a good point, Sam. It's just being used as a lot of cases in terms of just the AI marketing badge, isn't it? So I think the takeaway for me from everybody is, you know, let's get on with the practical side of things. AI is certainly in the toolbox, and people are using it, and is a moving target, and we don't quite know where it's going to go. But I think for me, I think it's really important for libraries to get involved in this, and to make use of that trusted sense that people always talk about in terms of libraries. But this sounds to me an area where librarians and libraries can make a real impact in their wider institutions, in terms of that badge of trustedness and helping students and so on. So on that point, if there's any other comments that anybody want to make, please do, you know, throw them in. Otherwise, I'll call things to a close and stop the recording. Well, I'll stop the recording, say thank you to everyone. We have recorded this session. This will be made available to everybody who registered. And yeah, thanks, Jonathan, Dave, Kerry, Sam, Martin. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being part of this, and we'll stay in touch. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.